Imagine the iconic John Wayne standing alone under a blazing Californian sun, his silhouette framed by the spires of Warner Bros. Studio. The crowd admired the cowboy hero on screen, but behind that confident grin lay an untold danger that would shock Hollywood's golden circle. It was the early 1950s, and a Cold War tension stretched from Washington to Moscow like a taut steel cable. Joseph Stalin, the ruthless mastermind of the Soviet Union, had grown obsessed with the cowboy's power on American hearts. He believed that the cinematic champion of freedom threatened his communist regime more than any missile or spy device. Fueled by paranoia, he did something unprecedented. He placed a bounty on John Wayne's life and ordered KGB agents to hunt him through offices and studio backlots, across borders and into Mexico itself. Yet, when those assassins came, they met a legend who was ready and waiting. John Wayne never served in World War II. He was too tall, too vital to the cash registers of Republic Pictures. Yet, America saw him as a wartime symbol, a soldier made of celluloid, leading charges and thwarting fascists. The truth was more complicated. Wayne wore the uniform on screen, but off-screen his status earned him 4 draft deferments, each an ironic stain on his heroic persona. Newspaper headlines roared about his films encouraging troops, while whispers fanned out in bars about the man who never left Hollywood. But none of that mattered when Stalin personally ordered Wayne's assassination. The plot was chilling in its audacity. Agents disguised as FBI officers would approach Wayne at his office door, whispering national security secrets, luring him into a trap that ended in bloodshed. They believed their Soviet training, indoctrination and fear, would grant them victory over the cowboy who had toppled bad guys for decades. Word of the plot reached J. Edgar Hoover's bureau through an unlikely channel, a terrified courier in Vienna who defected with microfilm detailing Operation Sunrise. Hoover's agents began watching Wayne like hawks, staking out every casting call, every living room script meeting. They placed him under quiet protection, but Wayne refused the typical detail of uniformed guards shadowing his heels. He wanted to live free, to face what came his way without fear. One afternoon, in a corridor lined with gold records and framed studio contracts, 2 men in dark suits walked toward him with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Wayne halted in his tracks. He eyed the pins on their lapels, and his hand drifted to the holster beneath his jacket. Nobody else in that hallway even knew what was happening. One agent cleared his throat and said, "Mr. Wayne, we're here to take you to a secure location." Wayne's voice was low, unwavering. "You might want to rethink that." With lightning precision, he swept his jacket aside, revealing the butt of a service revolver, and leveled it at the pair. He squeezed the grip until his knuckles went white. For a moment, the agents froze, lips parting in silent panic. Then Wayne spoke softly, "You can lower your guns, or I can make this unpleasant for both of us." They slowly surrendered, blank stares etched on their faces. Minutes later, the FBI agents emerged from a concealed anteroom, cuffed the imposters, and led them away, shaking in terror of the red hammer and sickle they'd left behind. This was not the legend of a man who cowered. It was the making of a myth. But how did it all begin? Wayne's rise from Marion Morrison, a lanky farm boy from Iowa, to John Wayne, Hollywood's towering cowboy, was riddled with grit and pain. He spent childhood summers racing horses across back roads and long winter evenings, listening to his mother recount stories of the Wild West. When the family escaped poverty in Iowa to find hope in Glendale, California, young Morrison discovered movies at the local Nickelodeon and dreamed of reigning as a screen cowboy. A football injury at USC shattered chances of a scholarship but opened a studio door as a prop boy. He hauled lights and animals across dusty backlots, tiny paycheck in hand, until a lucky meeting with director Raoul Walsh in 1930 cast him as a lead in The Big Trail. With a new name, John Wayne, he blazed across celluloid canyons, learning to ride and shoot and speak through the camera, until he became the face of American freedom in films like Stagecoach. Yet, real freedom came with a price. The blacklisting era arrived in the late 1940s, and Wayne sided fiercely with anti-communist crusaders. He backed HUS, threatened dissenting writers, and denounced colleagues who refused to name communist sympathizers. His politics made him a hero to many and a villain to others. Stalin watched every interview, every public rally. Convinced Wayne embodied the capitalist threat invading Soviet minds. From Moscow's shadowy chambers came the order: eliminate the cowboy icon and demoralize America's spirit. That order set into motion a chain of clandestine operations, brushfire plots with snipers in remote desert sets, infiltration of studio security, and false badges gleaming in the dusty corridors of power. It was the kind of story that Hollywood would swallow whole for a blockbuster. But this was no fiction. Those black, suited figures in Wayne's office were real, and their terror became Wayne's testament. Behind the Cold War curtain, alliances shifted like windswept tumbleweeds. Agents captured alongside the cowboy confessed they'd walked into their own undoing, broken by fear deeper than any bullet. They revealed Stalin's fanatic conviction that killing Wayne could cripple the morale of a nation. But secretly, they whispered. The men themselves had begun to doubt. Was Stalin really the sovereign of their destiny, or a despotic mirage cloaked in lies? In those confessions lay the seeds of a double life. Soviet informants turned assets for Hoover's bureau, feeding intelligence that would unravel Cold War networks. Wayne became an unwitting pawn and champion in a hidden war that blurred the lines between patriotism and deception. Stepping back into the golden light of Hollywood, Wayne resumed filming Hondo, riding across the desert with that same steely gaze. Reporters buzzed, intrigued by rumors of a confrontation that had never hit the papers. Wayne said little, only that, "This is a free country, and I'll face any danger with a grin." But every time he cocked that holster, ready hand, or cracked a grin under a battered cowboy hat, audiences felt the echo of real gunmetal tension behind the scenes. They cheered the hero on celluloid, unaware that the line between real and reality had been shot through with politics and peril. Late that evening, after the imposters were hauled off, under the glow of flickering studio lamps, John Wayne retreated to his private screening room. He sat alone, boots kicked up on a worn leather ottoman, replaying the confrontation in his mind. The every syllable of panic that escaped those agents, lips echoed like rifle shots in a silent canyon. Yet Wayne felt no fear, only an iron resolve that this ambush would be met with the same grit he'd poured into every role. He sipped whiskey neat, the burn reinforcing a conviction that he didn't just play a hero on screen. He was one, even when the enemy didn't carry silver bullet bills but state secrets and counterfeit badges. Word of the incident spread through Hollywood in whispers. Makeup artists paused mid-application. Stuntmen exchanged nods of respect when Wayne's name passed their lips, and studio heads convened in hushed corridors. They'd built monuments of celluloid around Wayne's image. Towering statues of the Lone Ranger, righteous cavalry captain, and crusading sheriff. Now they realized those monuments could have crumbled under Soviet orders. But rather than shrink back, Wayne doubled down. He marched onto set the next morning wearing bolo tie and 10-gallon hat, chin up and gaze fixed on the horizon. The cameras rolled, and he sold every line of dialogue with renewed intensity, as if each sunset sequence were a personal declaration. "You can try to take me, but I stand ready." Meanwhile, in Moscow's labyrinth of mirrored corridors and whispering informants, Stalin's surviving officers seethed. The failure to eliminate Wayne was more than an intelligence blow. It was a stain on the Soviet psyche. They convened secret councils, mapping out new plans that would reach beyond Californian hills. Their logic: if two men with fake FBI credentials could not achieve their goal, then why not try another method? One that used distance, patience, and a single precise bullet. Mexico became the next target. Compacts and screeching tires slipped through customs checks alongside coded ciphers. A sniper was dispatched to a remote desert set where Wayne filmed Hondo, armed with a specialized rifle that folded up into a violin case. The odds seemed in their favor. Wayne's back was turned to the rising sun, his eyes hidden beneath a dusty hat brim, as he measured the trajectory of his fake blast against a clapboard star. But fate, or perhaps mere coincidence, intervened. A local ranch hand spotted a lone figure hoisting a rifle on a rocky outcrop. Recognizing the telltale glint of scope glass in the midday sun, he sounded the alarm, and Mexican security closed in. Wayne, halfway through a dramatic draw, lowered his revolver at the sound of shouted Spanish. He squinted toward the cliffs, noting the silhouette of a man poised like a vulture. Instead of panic, he cocked an eyebrow and muttered under his breath, "They'll have to aim better than that." The would-be assassin abandoned his post, melting into the scrubland. Months later, Mexican authorities revealed the sniper had Soviet ties, though they never formally charged him for fear of diplomatic fallout. The mere knowledge of that attempt only added layers to Wayne's legend. A cowboy who outdrew bullets and bureaucratic conspiracies alike. Back on American soil, the FBI quietly collected every scrap of intelligence gleaned from these foiled plots. Wayne's bravado had yielded confessions, solid leads, and a trove of clandestine documents mapping KGB cells in Los Angeles. Hoover's men pored over microfilm, cross-checking payrolls and known safe houses. Each revelation pointed to a larger Soviet scheme to undermine Hollywood's cultural influence. The Bureau concluded that Wayne himself had become a symbol more potent than any propaganda reel. A living testament that American individualism was worth defending at all costs. Throughout this hidden war, Wayne maintained his public persona as the affable cowboy. He autographed posters, greeted fans in bustling amusement parks, and even visited children's hospitals in full Western regalia. Yet beneath every firm handshake was a man sharpened by the knowledge that unseen eyes watched his every move. He took to rehearsing precise gun spins and stance adjustments, not for aesthetic flair, but for preparedness. If a sniper ever scored a clean shot, he vowed to minimize the impact, to fall in a way that delivered the maximum warning. In the spring of 1954, rumors of a third plot surfaced. This time, the agents planned to strike during a live broadcast of a nationally televised rodeo demonstration. The logic: televised bullet fire could obscure the true sound of a fatal shot, masking it in the roar of the crowd. Technicians backstage found tampered microphones and a hidden wire leading to an unregistered amplifier. The FBI swooped in, dismantling the rig and arresting a nervous sound engineer with Soviet accents and forged credentials. Wayne, notified of the threat after the fact, merely chuckled and told a press agent, "They almost had me with a trumpet trick." Reporters snapped the line like a seasoned quip, splashing it across entertainment pages as evidence of his unflappable spirit. Yet with every arrest, every uncovered plot, Wayne confronted an uncomfortable truth. Hollywood glamour offered no shield against ideological warfare. His celluloid battles were choreographed, trimmed by film editors, and wrapped before the credits rolled. In real life, the danger extended beyond the final scene. The aftermath of each failed attempt weighed on him as much as any physical bruise. Some nights, he awoke in cold sweats, the echo of phantom gunfire rattling through his dreams. But once dawn broke, he donned his costume, slapped on his game face, and strode onto the set with the confidence of a man who had faced bullets and walked away. By 1956, John Wayne's myth had grown so vast that it transcended film. He appeared on magazine covers beside generals and presidents, posed with models draped in stars and stripes, and delivered speeches on patriotism at West Point-sponsored events. He had become a living emblem of American resilience, a symbol that even the Kremlin's deadliest agents could not extinguish. Each appearance reinforced the narrative that Wayne was more than an actor. He was a cultural fortress, bulwarked by determination and a refusal to bow to fear. In Hollywood's hushed circles, rumors of Wayne's narrow escapes swirled for years without a single named source, until 1983, when Orson Welles, reclining at a star-studded dinner party, dropped the bombshell. He leaned across a mahogany table and told author Michael Munn about the clandestine operations he'd heard from Russian directors in exile. Stalin himself ordered the hit. Welles whispered, his voice thick with irony. Munn's pen froze on the page. The story was too sensational to dismiss, yet too tangled in hearsay to verify. Welles insisted he'd heard it directly from Alexei Kapler, the screenwriter once imprisoned by Stalin, who'd passed it to Sergei Bondarchuk, who'd told Sergei Gerasimov, who'd reported back to Moscow. Each step felt like a game of Russian telephone, fragments of truth woven with speculation. But when it emerged in Munn's 2003 book, the myth gained new momentum. Across review sites and conspiracy forums, enthusiasts dissected every detail: how two Fox FBI agents quaked under fake blanks, an assassin in Mexico spooked by a ranch hand's shout, the rodeo broadcast rigged to kill. Collectors unearthed microfilm still blurring under magnifying readers, while archivists speculated on secret FBI memos hidden in dusty DC vaults. Podcasts devoted entire series to analyzing the logistics: the sniper's folded rifle in a violin case, the grainy B-roll of Hondo's desert sequences. Wayne's legacy morphed into a perpetual "what if?" Did those assassins really plot to kill him? Or was Hollywood spinning a yarn to elevate a fading icon? Each new retelling warped the story further, adding or excising details like an editor cutting a final reel. In parallel, critics re-examined Wayne's politics, arguing that his staunch anti-communism, backing USC, publicly shaming colleagues, championing blacklist retribution, made him as complicit in a different kind of assassination, the decimation of careers. Philip Loeb, an actor blacklisted and driven to despair, became an emblem of Wayne's ruthless endorsement of purges. When scholars contrasted Wayne's cinematic valor with Loeb's real-life tragedy, they asked, could a man who turned informant in Hollywood's rich studios truly be America's fearless cowboy hero? The juxtaposition of Wayne's narrow escapes from communist bullets and his own role in ideological bloodletting created a jarring counterpoint. Journalists and historians coalesced into two camps. One side, the believers, pointed to declassified KGB files, FBI affidavits, and Orson Welles' account as proof Wayne had faced genuine mortal peril orchestrated by Stalin himself. They framed the Cowboy's resistance as a microcosm of the broader Cold War, an individual standing tall against the machinery of a totalitarian state. The other side, the skeptics, insisted the tale was too neat, too cinematic. They cited the lack of official confirmation from Hoover's estate, the improbability of Soviet agents using two-man cells without backup, and the convenience of the story's timing, surfacing just when Wayne's public image needed revitalization in the 1980s nostalgia boom. Within Wayne's own family, opinions diverged. Ethan Wayne, his youngest son, recalled his father's stern lectures on loyalty and duty, but admitted his dad never shared details of the assassination attempts. He sensed a reluctance to revisit those dangerous days. Other relatives suspected the stories had been embellished. Hollywood innings are prone to hyperbole, after all. Yet when Ethan visited Moscow in 1991, newly opened archives revealed telegrams mentioning Cowboy emissary and Hollywood morale target, phrases that some interpreted as code for John Wayne. The ambiguity only fueled further debate. Meanwhile, the myth seeped into late-night talk shows and comic strips. Late one night, Johnny Carson quipped, "I hear Wayne drew a fake gun just to startle Stalin himself." Political cartoons depicted Wayne in pewter, gray silhouette, revolver raised at the Kremlin's walls. Video game designers even toyed with levels featuring Stalin's snipers, chasing a pixelated Duke across ranch lands and film sets. The narrative infiltrated pop culture so thoroughly that younger fans often encountered it first as entertainment, then dug deeper into archives seeking truth. Despite the factions and feverish conjecture, one thing remained undisputed. The story of Wayne facing real danger elevated his legend beyond the silver screen. It became a tale of duality, warrior of make-believe battles and combatant in a covert ideological war. In universities, film courses paired John Ford's directional genius with deep dives into Cold War cinema, juxtaposing Stagecoach's dusty trails against Soviet snooping. Wayne's name floated through lectures on propaganda, raising questions about how narratives shape public consciousness and how one man could symbolize both heroic defiance and political intolerance. Then came an unexpected twist in 2009, when a stash of sealed Soviet court documents surfaced in a European archive. The papers referenced a decisive operation, targeting a prominent U.S. film star, though they never specified the name. Still, the descriptions, tall, American accent, mascot of freedom, pointed unmistakably to Wayne. Historians translated the files, careful to note their redactions and gaps, and published digital facsimiles online. The documents did not confirm an assassination order from Stalin himself, only that Soviet operatives had assembled in Vienna to consider eliminating a cultural icon. Critics labeled it evidence of intent, but not execution. The believers cheered a vindication of sorts. The skeptics scoffed at so many disclaimers. As the debate churned on, Wayne's cinematic legacy continued to speak for itself. Film festivals celebrated restored prints of his classics. Retrospective panel discussions explored his complex persona. Viewers flocked to stream Stagecoach, The Searchers, True Grit, and Hondo, not just to watch a good Western, but to listen for echoes of that hidden struggle between democracy and dictatorship. When Wayne's weathered silhouette appeared on screen, audiences felt more than nostalgia. They sensed a warrior's vigilance, a man who'd turned showmanship into a shield against real-world bullets. In the end, the question wouldn't be settled by files or footnotes. Like all great myths, this one thrived on uncertainty. Was John Wayne's showdown with KGB assassins a documented fact of Cold War espionage, or simply Hollywood's greatest legend? Perhaps it was both. A truth so unbelievable it needed cinematic flair, and a myth so compelling it inspired historians to hunt for scraps of reality. Either way, the Cowboy's legacy expanded beyond box office tallies and Oscar nominations. He stood at the crossroads of ideology and imagination, proving that even the grandest myths can carry shards of truth, sharp as a bullet, piercing as a peek behind the curtain. From the moment those sealed Soviet court files surfaced to the digital whispers of internet forums, John Wayne's hidden war continued to cast a long shadow over his legend. In countless retrospectives, his silhouette, 6'4" of worn denim and sun-bleached hat, became the ultimate icon of American defiance. Yet the ghost of those KGB plots lingered in every dusty film grain, a question mark flickering at the edge of every sunset scene. Did the cowboy who charged into bandit hideouts and faced down Indian war parties on celluloid truly stare death in the face as Stalin's assassins lurked in studio corridors? Or was this simply another Hollywood yarn, a myth spun to feed the need for larger-than-life heroes in uncertain times? The answer, as always, lies somewhere between two extremes, where truth becomes as elusive as a tumbleweed in the desert wind. In the years following Wayne's death in 1979, film historians dissected his career with forensic precision. They noted how his body bore the physical scars of decades of backlot stunts. Pneumonia contracted after a collapsed barn set, a broken wrist from a runaway stagecoach reel, and a lifetime's worth of bruised ribs. But it was the psychological scars that intrigued scholars most. The way Wayne's grin sometimes faltered in interviews when the topic of loyalty or patriotism came up. Biographers speculated that the fear seeded by those failed assassination attempts might have fueled his lifelong crusade against communism. Perhaps, they argued, Wayne's zealous championing of anti-communist causes, his fairy speeches at studio rallies, his endorsements of blacklisting, sprang from a deep-seated need to prove he was never a victim of foreign tyranny. Meanwhile, digital age sleuths combed through online archives, piecing together bits of overheard testimony with redacted cables. Amateur codebreakers claimed they'd found Soviet cipher keys hidden in the margins of a 1953 Pravda broadcast. A self-styled Wayneologist spent years reconstructing every studio call sheet, searching for anomalies, missing names, unexplained delays. that might allude to undercover operations. In one viral thread, a user posted 2 blurry frame grabs from Hondo, arguing the shape of Wayne's hat brim in each image subtly changed. Evidence he'd been wearing protective gear, rather than an ordinary Western hat during sniper scenes. Others dismissed such minutiae as overzealous wishful thinking, plain artifacts of film restoration. Still, every click, every share, every retweet ensured the story lived on. And perhaps that was the point. Wayne's legacy had become a Rorschach test for America's own anxieties, fear of infiltration, hunger for heroism, and the persistent lure of conspiracy.